Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where we are here to discuss a couple things. First of all, the Ravens lost against the Raiders. 23-26. It's like some crazy stat of 28% of the games the Ravens have lost. They've lost when they had a 2-possession lead in the second half. You love to see it. And then we'll also talk about the Cowboys, kind of look ahead of the next game. And to do that, we have our friend Derek, who is the biggest air quotes fan of the Cowboys that exists because he's kind of anti-fandom in the first place.
Yeah, it's a pretty good description. It's embarrassing to be a Cowboys fan, honestly. It's just too much stigma attached to it. So I don't tell too many. I only tell my closest friends that I'm a Cowboys fan. So.
Perfect. Well, luckily for you, this
honored.
is getting streamed to people who you've probably never met. So
they are now my closest friends.
These days.
I just saw a reel of a Cowboys fan taking television, throwing it out of his garage on his driveway, and then running it over with a truck after losing to the Saints last week. Man,
that was actually
social
me.
media. What a thing!
Yeah, my wife is furious, but that's part of being a fan.
Well, Derek, I gotta ask, how much was that TV? Because man, like that just seems like what did the TV do? That's a huge waste of money.
The TV is obviously the reason the Cowboys lost. Like the TV was supposed to guard Rashid Shaheed on that deep 9 down the seam and just totally dropped the ball on it. So it had to go.
Man, well, someone should have told Jerry Jones next time to sign a player with legs and hands for that. But
Is that why Jerry World has that massive screen? It's just compensating for the fact that the other screen can't execute cover 2.
That's how you go all in. You have a 70-inch Samsung playing free safety. That's what it is.
Well, this show's already off the rails.
Do we want to stay it on the rails? Do we want it? Do we want to?
No, we don't. That's the whole goal of One Winning Pod at this point. It's just off the rails 24/7 to the max. But yeah, I mean, we're 0-2. Peter, I want to swing it over to you because you mentioned that you kind of did a little study of teams that started 0-2 and their ability to get into the playoffs.
Oh man, I'm bringing that up already.
Sure.
I mean, so I did a little bit of a dig there, and I think we all do at those times. And by all of us, I mean fans of teams who start 0-2. And it's happened a couple times. Teams have made the playoffs with an 0-2 start. Doesn't happen every season. Happens now and again. Most recently, the past 2 years, 2023, the Texans started out 0-2. They made the postseason. Year before that, it was the Bengals. And you've had a couple teams have gone on to win the Super Bowl after starting out 0-2. You had the 92 Cowboys. They did it. Or was it 93? It was either 92 or 93. And then 2001 Patriots, they started out 0-2 and they won it all. And most recently, the 2007 Giants. So, it's not the end of the season yet for the Ravens. Now, if they go 0-3, you have only one team in NFL history who has ever made the playoffs after starting out 0-3, and that would be the 1992 Chargers. They would finish 11-5 that year. So it's kind of a must-win game coming up, but also kind of not because, there's still a lot of the season to go. But right, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, a lot of Ravens fans are really ticked off this week. I get it. I think you look at the talent on this team and you can look at it one of two ways. First off, they had more talent than the Raiders and should have won that game, even though the Raiders were competitive in the game, which, as I said last week, I wouldn't have been shocked if they were. But also at the same time, you look at it, I mean, this is a roster that has the players to be able to pull themselves out of this hole, right? So, a lot of football still to play and hopefully a better showing in Dallas because, man, do I not want to watch that again.
Yeah, I'm with you on that take, Peter. I think it feels like a must-win game for me. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Chiefs game stung, I think, as we talked about it, just because of the ending. I think, at least from my perspective going into it, like, I didn't think that we were going to come out and get the win. Like, obviously, the loss from last year is still fresh in our minds, and I think the Ravens have been in position to play the Super Bowl champs the following year, and the last one against the Broncos did not look pretty. History was kind of out on terms of how the Ravens would perform week one against the Chiefs, but this week, yeah, against the Raiders team, where I feel like all the Ravens fans knew that hey, we've got more talent than the Raiders over here. Yeah, Minshew has given us some fits, but come on. What's going on here? And to lose in that fashion, yeah, it stunk. Walking out of the stadium, my God, it felt terrible. So it's really weird, I feel like, this would never happen, but I feel like it would be different if, for whatever reason, EDC and Harbaugh were basically beginning of the season, guys, offensive line going to be real bad. We probably are not going to have the talent this year. So buckle up. We're preparing for 25, for example. They would never say that, to be clear. But if there's even an inkling that that could be a reality that we're seeing right now, the fan base did not get that memo. Right now, we're all very much in a Super Bowl or bust mode right now.
One silver lining is these are out of division games, so you still have all of your 6 division games, and no one else in the division has looked all that impressive. So, I mean, that's the nice thing about the NFL is you can win your division and you get a home playoff game. So that's even at 0-3, can't imagine, you're out of it.
I mean, after this week, I'm calling it right now. If I had to say right now, 8-9 is going to win the AFC North this year.
Wow.
That's wild.
That's an overreaction, but at the same time,
that would end the Mike Tomlin no losing season run.
Yeah.
The AFC North will probably beat up on itself. That's the good news, right? And self-deflate the everyone's record. But it is kind of crazy that the Steelers are currently 2-0 with a 2x point differential, 31 points for, 16 points against. I mean, basically the greatest team in the NFL. So Fields is back, baby. But yeah, it's something to behold. I do think you bring up a good point, Derek, that the AFC North feels winnable at this point. It's very much still in grasp. I do think, though, it's one of those things where I've always kind of mentioned the notion of a loss token. It's you're allowed to have n losses in a year. Use them wisely. And we used 2 already. Hate to see it, but if you kind of steal one back, you steal a game that you thought maybe you were going to lose going into the year. Let's say, for instance, the Bills game seems like a tough game. It's still at home, but it's a good team. You steal that one back, then you're on the right track. So that's kind of how I see it at this point. We're gonna have to win a game that we weren't supposed to, quote unquote. Maybe sweep the Bengals. You weren't supposed to necessarily do that. If you do that, then you're back on track. Things of that nature. But man, I guess Chris, I want to go back to that offensive line thing. Not to pick wounds of the whole Falele Cleveland thing, because I feel like that's been beaten to death. I will say, I thought the greatest diatribe was in Exit 52 by Spenny. It was really special around the 6-minute point of their instant reaction of that game. That's all I have to say about Falele. But apparently, Harbaugh wanted to squash that at the presser today. I felt like he went scorch earth to steal Peter's words earlier today of Cleveland saying, he didn't win the job against Falele. He didn't beat anyone for a job, which is, I don't know if that was a throwaway last little thing, he didn't beat anyone, but I mean, that's pretty bad. Apparently, Saleh beat him, using those words, and he just happened to be the last man on the roster. So, yikes! I feel like we're never going to see Cleveland. He's very much in the doghouse.
His name's Cleveland. He never stood a chance. What are they doing?
Why did you think he was going to play for Baltimore? Good point.
Yeah, you know what, man? Yeah, it's a weird argument now. I feel like we talked about this in the group chat earlier, but I think the weirdest thing is just why even keep him on the 53 if the fan base thinks that he's going to be a guy that can compete in the position, but now you're kind of saying he barely made the roster. It's well, you either would have kept Zeitler or pick up another guard, because from I you know me, man. Like, I'm not a Cleveland guy, and I'm not necessarily like a Falele guy either. But like, I thought that he had the upper track right now. But I mean, I think he's still looking pretty rough, right? I think that he'll have some good snaps where he pass blocks well. I think there were some that he struggled a little bit. But it was against Max Crosby, and honestly, Crosby I think was having some providing some fits for a bunch of guys, McCary in particular. Rosengarten did okay. I think Linderbaum missed a couple for Crosby as well. So, it was a little rough. I think a lot of guys were performing rough, but you just, you hate to kind of see this experiment now. Like, I get it from the, roster construction of wanting to go younger and all that stuff, but like, right now, I think it's just really hurting our ability for the offense to sustain drives. That seems like the most pressing thing right now. Is just we're so inconsistent. I think it starts with offensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a tough subject to talk about because I mean the decision's been made, right? And the Ravens had all offseason to find a veteran guy in free agency or try and work out a contract with Kevin Zeitler that would have made sense. And that's not the route they took, right? And now we just have to see how they can make it work. This isn't the first time we've seen a Ravens team have a discombobulated offensive line early in the season, and then things kind of mesh together as they go along. But also at the same time, I think that the Ravens in the coming games will have to adjust their play calling a bit in order to make it easier for the offensive line. It's like we know the variables are here. We know these guys have work to do. I think there's going to be some instances they should change the play calling a bit to kind of compensate for that. Let's also not forget, like, these first two games that they've had, they're going to have Micah Parsons next week. This week they had Max Crosby. Week before that they had Chris Jones. Those aren't easy assignments for an Andrew Voorhees or for a Daniel Falalele, Roger Rosengarten, who the only one of those who's played NFL downs is Falalele, and I guess he's played a decent amount by this point. But if you just look at Rosengarten and Voorhees, that's 40% of your offensive line right there getting thrown into the fire and some pretty darn tough assignments to start with. I don't think that's an excuse. I just think that, the Ravens have to have a plan. They have to be aware that that's what they're dealing with. And current plan isn't working. And hopefully they come up with one.
Derek, do the Cowboys have any pass rushers of note?
I think they have a couple guys that are okay. No, I mean the Cowboys, they are leading the league in pressure rate.
Yay!
After 2 weeks, and that's with a game against New Orleans where they didn't do anything right, and they're still leading the league in pressures. And I mean, they're hitting the quarterback, knocking down the quarterback more than any other team. Lamar is going to be moving around. He's going to not have a lot of time to throw. So I feel like the way to beat Dallas is they're going to have to scheme against that somehow, whether it be, I would like to see, if I'm a Ravens fan, I would like to see more of that read option with Derrick Henry, make them choose whether or not you want to go after the speedy guy or the huge guy. I think that's the way you got to neutralize that pass rush if you're not getting any kind of offensive line support on that. I mean, Micah Parsons is top 3 in the league at his position, and then DeMarcus Lawrence is playing like he was 4 or 5 years ago. So, that's tough. That is tough to go against when you have struggles at offensive line.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the biggest things I'm worried about, frankly.
Yeah, and the thing about the Cowboys defense is, Trayvon Diggs had a big interception year a couple years ago. Of course, Deron Bland had the all-pro season he did last year. Those guys, though, I mean, they get burned a lot, and we saw that against New Orleans. And the Cowboys' whole defense, where it gets where it makes its plays is in the pass rush. And if you're able to neutralize that, you can find some openings in that pass defense. But again, like you guys have been talking about, that has not been something Baltimore's been able to do first 2 weeks.
Yeah, something I'm looking at here that I think, do I think that this is what the Ravens are going to do? No, but I do wonder if this is a game where the Ravens look at what the Saints did with Alvin Kamara in that game. And now Justice Hill is nowhere near on the level of Alvin Kamara. So don't think I'm making that comparison. But at least look at some of the things the Saints are able to do and get him a little more involved in this game. Set him up on some screens, do some things over the middle in the passing game, similar to those concepts that the Saints did. Because like you're saying, with those pass rushers up there, it's going to be tough once again for them to get Derrick Henry involved in the game until the second half. And that's great. That's great to have Derrick Henry ram the defense like he did against the Raiders, but you got to have a plan for the first half when this interior line is just not going to give the holes that Henry needs. So I'd like to see them use Justice Hill at least attempt it. He had a couple big games last year towards the end of the season when Gus was having his injuries and obviously Keaton Mitchell was out. So we've seen Hill in a more extended role than the little bit he's had so far. And I think that could be something, once again, the line isn't going to get holes in the first half for Henry. Let's do some draws. Let's do some, get Justice Hill the ball in space. I think that's a path that they could have some success with if they go and try that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I kind of got deja vu watching that Saints game because it reminded me a lot of what the Packers did in the playoffs, and those are the last two games in AT&T Stadium, were the Packers game and that Saints game. And now, the personnel of the Ravens, they have talent and speed on that offense, which is what the Packers and Saints both used to exploit the Cowboys defense. So the blueprint is kind of there, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see what they're able to do, but the first step is neutralizing the pass rush, and getting quick passes off and getting, I mean, Kamara, I think did Aaron Jones have 4 touchdowns against the Cowboys in the playoffs? It was a 3 or 4. Like it was eerie how similar their two games were, and both of them just had huge holes to run through because they were schemed open. It was tough to watch.
I think the big thing I'm looking towards going forward with the offense is we've seen 2 interesting trends with the data points we've been presented. First of all, Aguilar was more used this week at the expense of Likely's snaps. They were in a lot more 11 personnel. And Kohler's getting a lot of work. He's gotten 22% of the snaps in the last game. Hill's been subbing in for Henry in a lot of situations, and whenever we have hurry-up drives, it inflates his snaps. And then, of course, Rosengarten's been cycling in and out, and after the bad week 1, he had a much better week 2. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see more of Rosengarten. So, even if we take 77 out of the picture, I'm curious what personnel packages the Ravens are trending towards, and what kind of offenses they're going to be trending towards going against the Cowboys. I mean, it would be just another data point because it kind of like what you're saying, Derek. They might want to try to utilize speed to shoot up the seams or something to try to attack them. But I think I'm mostly curious because if the pass rush is going to get home quickly, it's really important that the Ravens play in structure. And that kind of leads to my other point. The Ravens are really bad at playing in structure. Sometimes when they play in structure, it looks really beautiful and really good. And I think one of the biggest benefactors of that is Rashad Bateman. That 19-yard out pass was so beautiful to the left-hand side earlier, or kind of second half of the game against the Raiders. But those plays are not often. I thought another play that was really well executed was right after the sack, they allowed Max Crosby to penetrate again and then went right over top of him to Likely and then got a big gain. I think those were nice in structure planned plays that really worked well. But I feel we're getting to the out of structure stuff quickly when the pass rush breaks down and Lamar is able to break free. And part of me is what can we do to slow down the pass rush via in structure plays? And what personnel packages do you need to get to those plays? Is it Likely? Is it Kohler? Aguilar, Tyler Wallace, Hardy. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I feel like they've really got to figure something out. Like I was saying earlier, I think the biggest problem is just like the inconsistency. To your point, Alec, yeah, I mean, there are a couple of plays in there on structure that were really beautiful. The other play that kind of came up to me was the touchdown to Zay at the third quarter. That was another really nifty unbalanced line. They sort of swapped Mark Andrews and Ronnie Stanley. I remember telling you this at the stadium.
Yeah,
but they ended up swapping them, and the Raiders didn't know where things were lying. They ended up faking the run to the right behind Ronnie, and then threw it to Zay in the middle. So it was a great play, great alignment. We're just it's just we don't see that. There are a lot of plays that we have that were just not executed very well, negative plays, and those put us in bad situations, such as Lamar has to play hero ball and try to get it out to his guys, and sometimes it does work, but just very stale right now. Just not able to find a whole lot of consistency, and yeah, it shows. The whole first half of that game, and we didn't have a touchdown until the third quarter. Could have ended up having 12 points, missed a field goal. That hurt. Obviously, losing by 3, that really hurt. And we got to figure something out.
Should be a fun kicker battle this week, though.
Hopefully,
you got the old goat and the new goat.
Yeah. You want to take a little bit to talk about Aubrey, because he's been great since he stepped on the scene.
He's unbelievable. I mean, in week 1, he made a 66-yard field goal that, it looked like the way it went through the net, it looked like a 45-yard field goal. It cleared by so much, and then it was called back because of illegal formation or something. I can't remember. But it was called back
behind him or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was an open air. That was in the dog pound that he hit that, and then crazy. They sent him back out there for a 71-yarder, but then they pulled him off and threw a useless Hail Mary. But
that's no fun.
It is great. You step on the field on offense and you're 10, 15 yards from being in scoring range. That is a huge weapon, and both these teams have that. They're playing in an indoor environment. I would be up for just seeing those two try to hit, maybe like a penalty shootout setup. Those two each 65-yard field goals, maybe. See who misses first.
I wouldn't mind that as
nobody gets hurt.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind that if, instead of, I think that the NFL should play around with that for a little bit. You might have something there, instead of having these games end in a tie at the end of overtime and regular season, do a kickoff, just like a shootout at the end of hockey, Yeah,
because kickers aren't under enough pressure as it is.
Exactly. Right.
We need to. It'd be great though, is position players kicking field goals. I feel like that's the move. It's like if the game's tied, you have to send Zay Flowers out to attempt a 30-yard field goal.
Zay Flowers.
Words.
Yep.
He's going to be like, this is a guy. He played kicker, including wide receiver when he was in high school.
Oh, man. Zay Flowers kicking a 30-yard field goal while Micah Parsons runs towards him unblocked.
That is must-see TV. That would be incredible.
Oh, man. We might have Derek on every week. This is great. Man. All right. So we've talked about the Ravens. We can complain about them some more, and we will, and point out good things. I think we did both. I think we point out some good things, some bad things. But yeah. So we're also going to look at the Cowboys here.
Whoa. We didn't even talk about the defense. I feel like that's important.
All right, fine, whatever. Then jump in and don't let me use the mic. Just mute me. I'll mute myself. All right.
I'm just saying. I think there's some interesting things about the defense. So it's a much better unit, right? Or I think there's less complaints about the defense. Obviously, they did fall apart at the end, but part of me is like, man, the way they lost was hard to be upset about things. They just force fed. Star of the receiver program on Netflix, Devontae Adams, who publicly on television told them, give me the ball, or we're not playing offense right. And he dominated. I mean, he did amazing things. Those late hands are incredible. The fall back, towards the ball, catch the ball, incredible. And I got a few snaps or a few stats I want to share. So 75% of the passing yards and 58% of the targets went to Adams and Bowers. Adams and Bowers accounted for 68.6% of total offensive yardage. And I also noted, like, anecdotally watching the game, most of the targets of other receivers was in the first half, or were extensions of the run game. In the second half, they just went like full on, like, we are hitting Adams and Bowers, Adams and Bowers, Adams and Bowers. Like that's all they did. They just spammed it. And I also think one of the things, though, that is a takeaway that you could learn from is this year we're not passing off zones as effectively. And what I'm noticing is I think Jackson has something to do with it, Eddie, and then, you know, a linebacker. So be it Trent Simpson or be it Roquan, like, it's just not quite clean. And I'm not 100% sure if that's, like, you know, Bowers being really good at finding those gaps in the zone coverage and just, like, tip your hat, or if it's something that we could guard better. It did seem like they were avoiding throwing to Hamilton. They only targeted him once or twice, and it was the Mayor. So I don't know. It was just an interesting thing. And maybe it's the second week we've kind of seen the linebackers exploited as a place to throw the ball with. I mean, Bowers is technically a tight end, but, you know, basically a wide receiver.
You're probably going to see similar stuff from Dallas, honestly. They have not established the run at all this year. Like, of course, they couldn't against New Orleans. They were down by 20 before the game started. But, I mean, you look at their rushing stats, Ezekiel Elliott has 56 rushing yards on the season. That's a good J.K. Dobbins run. And then Rico Dowdle, also 56 rushing yards. So, I mean, that's it. Deuce Vaughn has 15, for what that's worth. So you're probably going to see the same sort of thing. Jake Ferguson is expected back week 3. He apparently was very close to playing week 2. And, I mean, he's not Brock Bowers, but he's a good receiving tight end, and CeeDee Lamb is every bit as good as anybody else in the NFL at wide receiver. So similar type of weapons coming at the Ravens this week.
Yeah, I feel like Nate Wiggins being back in the lineup next week, I think will help a lot, just with being able to rotate him in and out. I kind of got the same thing with you, Alec, of looking a little bit for Hamilton. I feel like he's been quiet. We kind of talked about that in our group chat earlier, but I agree with you. I don't think it's because he's not doing his assignments. I think he is, but I think he's just not in a position where he can kind of create plays. He's just sort of kind of sticking on this guy and, you know, doing as he's supposed to, and then, you know, the quarterback's going with the ball somewhere else. So I do think, you know, having the ability to put Marlowe in the slot a little bit and kind of move him and Hamilton around, I think that could help. You know, certainly I think this is probably the way to get the defense with the best 11 guys. Like, I don't think putting Marlowe in the slot and, you know, putting Hamilton somewhere else and then maybe Armour Davis on Devontae Adams was probably the move. You know, if you thought he got a lot of passes, you know, in this game, like, you know, put JAD on him and he, you know, probably explodes for 200 yards. So I get it. Like, you know, I think it makes sense, but yeah, I think they're suffering a little bit right now, or just the lack of versatility, I think, in the guys that they want to put out there, but they just don't have available.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, though, you're going to need to find some way to get Hamilton on these tight ends. I mean, it just was very confusing to me why you continued after you had the issues last week with Rashee Rice just basically running free throughout the middle of the field the whole time, you know, letting Bowers basically do the same thing. In fairness, I mean, the Raiders use Bowers a lot, you know, more than just over the middle. They had him running slants. They had him running, you know, out routes. He was all over the place. But yeah, I mean, like you're saying, whether it's because of the injuries, whether it's because of the new scheme, you know, one of the best chess pieces the Ravens have is Kyle Hamilton coming in and neutralizing the tight end. That just didn't happen in this past game. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, Bowers is a guy who is going to be very special in this league. So I don't think there's any shame in the Ravens defense struggling to have a plan for a guy that you don't have much film with at the NFL level, who is going to be a stud. But at the same time, it did seem a little bit like it came as a surprise to the defense that he was going to be as involved as he was. And if that was the case, which is just a speculation, I don't have any hard evidence on that. That does feel like a missed opportunity in the game plan. I mean, there's a reason that Adams and Bowers had that target share, right? Because the Raiders literally have no one else.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers is forgotten. Yeah, I think this kind of also goes back to another point of I feel as though Orr has not developed a killer instinct yet. And it took a little bit of time for McDonald too to get to that level. So I'm not like, raising the alarms just yet. But it does feel like to me there's just something a little off about it. Like I feel like his ability to pivot to what he's seeing in these games, maybe a little slow. His reaction to make adjustments. So just something I'm kind of like noticing. But what's not slow is the pass rush. The pass rush was a very bright light in this game. 5 sacks by the defense, 6 if you count the Madubuike call. Madubuike sack that got called back. And 2 highlight performers. Owe had 2.5 sacks. Very disruptive at the beginning of the game. And then Kyle Van Noy, with his broken orbital bone, had 2 sacks, which is 2 more sacks than anyone with a broken orbital bone, as far as I ever heard. I thought that was incredible. So, yeah, I think that's the good sign. I mean, as an extension of that, like the front 7 just absolutely dominated the running game, only 27 yards rushing on 17 attempts for the Raiders. So it's really the pass game that feels like the number one point of concern for the Ravens to figure out, for the defense to really hit new heights. And I think, Chris, you bring up a good point. Like, if Wiggins comes back, I feel like the Ravens felt really good about their DB room, but there's a couple unfortunate injuries kind of slowing up. Like, because Millette is hurt and now Wiggins, like, you don't have a third corner you feel really good about. So you're then using safeties, and that might not be exactly what you're looking for. Like, you might not want Ardarius to be playing, for example.
Yeah, I mean, even with Ardarius, like, his health has been kind of a concern.
Yeah.
He has gotten a little bit of snaps, but probably rely on him for an extended period. I'm not sure if they feel comfortable with that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want to comment on defensive line real quick though, like, or really, I feel like these are a lot of good signs that it seems to me that the defense is going to continue to get better. Like, I think the defensive line is really continuing off, where they left off last year. Still pretty productive. They did really well in the run game. Obviously, Zamir White, like, not one of the top tier running backs in the league, but obviously, starting for the Raiders, like, there is that. But I do think that the pass rush is something that's been really good, and I think we've started to see it week in, week out. And honestly, like, again, once we kind of get some of the health figured out in the secondary, or gets a couple more games under his belt, like, I feel pretty good about this defense. I don't think that we've seen anything egregious from this defense. I mean, even think about it, right? It was at the second game that McDonald was defensive coordinator. We had the collapse to Miami. Like, we haven't had that yet. I mean, yeah, the collapse yesterday kind of sucked, but it was kind of a death by 1,000 paper cuts kind of thing. Like, we weren't letting them come back in by 40 points or something like that. So I feel good about where the direction the defense is right now. I think that there's just a couple things that we need to clean up, but like over the couple of weeks, like, I'm hoping it's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I will say the Cowboys should feel lucky that they're playing the Ravens early in the season, just because they are adjusting to a new scheme on defense, and their personnel is still, what it is. It's still very good. So now is the kind of the time you want to be facing, especially the Cowboys, kind of a retooled offensive line this year. That seems to be holding up pretty well. Dak's been sacked 6 times, and he has faced a little bit of pressure, and the offense does kind of need Dak to have a clean pocket in order to operate. So it is kind of a fortunate that the Cowboys are getting the Ravens right now when they still are kind of figuring things out on defense. But on the flip side, they've had 2 games now. They might flip it. This might be the get right game for the Ravens. They may come right into Dallas and really shut down that Cowboys passing attack. So, it's kind of there's a lot of unknowns going into it, given both the Ravens and the Cowboys O line are going through changes from last year.
One thing I also really want to bring up with the Ravens when we're talking about the defense, Odafe Oweh, man, the breakout might be here. Looked good against Kansas City and just was an absolute beast against the Raiders. I think he was credited for 2.5 sacks officially. Pass rushing moves are there. He's having a strong start to the year. Really interested to see what is he going to do. Is he going to be in the back of the pocket a lot with Dak? We'll see what happens there. He might have a sack contest between Micah Parsons and Odafe Oweh coming up here with the state of both these offensive lines. But yeah, I mean, one thing with this team, and I know there's a lot of people listening to this who, have a lot of emotions, I'm sure. I do too. But one team, we look at 2015, and unfortunately there are some parallels here. First week of the season, tight loss. Ravens had a touchdown. They failed in a close one. In 2015, it was the football bouncing off of Steve Smith's helmet as opposed to likely not getting his toe in. And then week 2, you have a loss to a Raiders team that you weren't expecting to lose to both those years. And you look at those teams and, one thing that you got to look at and look at those two teams. The 2015 team, you had issues with big plays being given up. The Raiders had a lot of chunk plays, weren't super big plays. You had injuries that were piling up. You didn't really have a wide receiver or even a tight end for Flacco to throw to in those years. It's the same record through 2 games, but I don't think that you're looking at the same team. I think Ravens are in a better spot than they were those 2 games. And only time will tell. This wasn't where we were hoping we'd be at this time. But I think you can look at it and there is some hope. And I'll just leave it at that. Derek's over here saying that we all just need to, take some vaccine or something to cure us of our fandom disease. But
I just enjoy football, man. Like the Cowboys were getting absolutely wrecked last week, and honestly, I thought it was kind of funny. Like it was just like seeing the Saints for the second week in a row. Everyone was like, "Oh, it was against Carolina. Dallas will shut them down." No, no, they won't. Like it's just like Saints are apparently going to run the league this year.
I mean, what can you do, right? All we can do is, apparently throw TVs. And if we all throw enough TVs, right, destroy enough TVs, things will change and our favorite teams will start winning again.
I mean, there's certain games. There's certain games you watch them and like it doesn't take long. You're like 5 minutes into the first quarter. You're like, there's just no way they're winning this game. And like, you don't know exactly why. It's just like, it was like that. I remember the Cowboys Bills game last year. I think the Bills went right down the field. James Cook ran for a touchdown. I was like, oh man, well, this was fun. Like it's over. It's over. I hope we don't get that this week, but that is kind of the formula to beat Dallas. I mean, the Bills did it. The Bills kind of did it first last year. They ran a lot with James Cook and Josh Allen, and then we saw the Packers do it in the playoffs. Now the Saints have done it, and this season. And if there's one thing that the Ravens are historically good at, it's running the football. And hopefully, for them, at least that can neutralize that pass attack.
Are you afraid of Derrick Henry?
Who isn't? I mean, he doesn't. Yeah, what I've seen, and I'm an admitted red zone viewer, so I see bits of games that come up that are presented to me, basically. Yeah. But what I've seen, I did watch the whole Kansas City game. He hasn't looked like the Derrick Henry that we're used to watching. But I don't know how much of that is overblown. What do you guys think? Or is Derrick Henry gonna do it for you guys this year? Or are you guys concerned?
I think he's lost a step or 2, which I mean was what I was expecting. I mean, he's 30 years old. I think that his prime was one of the best running backs in the NFL, particularly with the build that he has. I mean, the man's a physical freak. So, I mean, what I was expecting from him was an at worst slightly better Gus Edwards, and early on, yeah, I think that's what we're getting. I mean, I don't know how many big runs I'm expecting from him this year, but I'm expecting, him to do. I think that what we saw in week 2 is what I was expecting. He's going to be the grinder in the second half. Ideally, you have a healthy Keaton Mitchell or Justice Hill, doing some stuff in the first half. I think even with a better offensive line, just these power backs as they get older, they're better when everyone's tired. So, yeah, I think he's a piece of the offense, but he's not going to be, the focal point of this offense was always going to be Lamar Jackson. He's another option in the offense as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the blueprint to beat Dallas's defense probably 3 or 4 years ago was really just to grind them into the ground with a running game. I mean, we saw the Bucs do that a couple times with Leonard Fournette, and Henry is that kind of back. I do think the Cowboys have beefed up that interior of their defense a little more and are a little better at stopping that rushing attack. But yeah, I mean, when you have a guy that can take over a game like Derrick Henry, and he may still be able to do it. That is always scary because it just takes the air. It just takes the air out of the game and it beats up your defense. And by the time you get to the fourth quarter, you don't want to tackle that guy. And it just, they can just they can just completely take the game away from you. So yeah, as a observer watching my team play a guy, I don't want it to be Derrick Henry.
I guess like what I'll say about the whole Derrick Henry thing is, I've been seeing glimpses of the promise, so to speak. I just think that the Ravens offense hasn't looked good enough for us to really make a decision. That run down the sideline where he stiff armed, that was awesome. That was like classic Henry. But like if they're running a zone play or they're trying to pull to the right side and like the conga line is just not going to get there and everyone's going to be late and then he gets tackled in the backfield, like that's not really on him. Anyone could have been screwed. So like I think it's one of those things where Henry is best, like any running back, if you give him a hole, but like he's a multiplier, right? It's like if you give him a little bit of runway to get going, he's one of the most dangerous backs in the league, but we haven't given him much runway. So yeah. Those timings have been few and far in between. And that's why I really like seeing them using him in the passing game slightly, because it's a good way to manufacture him getting a couple steps without contact, and be able to make a guy miss or like be on a smaller man. These are things I like to see. So I hope to see more of it. That's one of the only reasons I'm disappointed with the Hill usage. I think Hill's a valuable player who earns the snaps, but I think he's not as dynamic or as threatening as Henry could be in those situations.
I thought it was so weird in the Kansas City game. It was like, as soon as Justice Hill was in, it was like, oh, well, pass play. Like it was just so strange. The use, I mean, and it was from the first drive throughout the whole game. It was just anytime there was any chance they were going to pass the ball, Derrick Henry was off the field. And if you go back and look, I mean, Tennessee used him in the passing game, just like you were saying. It gets him out in space and lets him get some speed going. And once he has speed going, he's still one of the hardest guys in the NFL to tackle, just based off of his pure size. So yeah, maybe they'll do more of that going forward.
I think they're trying to find their way. So
yeah.
Is this the bold prediction, score prediction time?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we've covered a lot, and I don't have anything else unless you guys do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is kind of a weird episode. We also, since we did a recap and a preview, technically we could also do moral victories if we want to.
We didn't do them last week either, I noticed.
I'm kind of over the moral victory awards, but if you guys want to bring it back, I'm fine, do it.
Well, I know we didn't mention him, but Mark Andrews, it was great to see him back. Obviously he didn't get the touchdown that I don't know. I mean, not that he had a play there. He could have gotten a touchdown. I would have liked to see him get a touchdown, but he had a cool couple of pretty good catches. I feel like he was back, so it was. I'm gonna throw out that to Mark, but otherwise, otherwise we can do bold and score predictions.
Okay, but before we do, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I wanted to acknowledge two things. So, in the last episode, but when we were transitioning over to the preview part of the show about the Raiders, we mentioned that we're doing a fundraiser for St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis that does research nationwide. And I really want to acknowledge the super generous donation of Hazim. It honestly made my week. I'll be like completely transparent. Like, I was like super duper happy that someone listener to decide like they're gonna spend their dollars towards what I think is a really worthy cause, and I think everyone on the show here agrees is a great cause. And I'm just like I was grateful. So thank you very much for doing that, helping us get closer to reaching our goal of $1,000 for St. Jude. And you can still donate. It's not too late. It's still Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and the link will be in the show notes and on the website and all that good stuff. So thank you very much for that. And also, this weekend is the St. Demetrius Greek Festival. Peter and I were just prepping the Slovakia, and we'll be there over the weekend. It's a great time. Bring the family, get some treats, get some lugomadas, get some frappe, whatever it is that you like, baklava, burrito, and support the community. It's, like I said, a good time, and there'll be live music on Saturday. But I just want to acknowledge that again. That was a really special moment, I think, for the 1 Minute Pod universe. And so Derek, over to you for your bold and score prediction, because we always go to guess first.
So explain this for me. Bold, am I just saying who I think is going to win and what the score is going to be? Is that it?
No. Oh, it's two different things. The bold prediction is like a prop bet that's unlikely to happen, for lack of better words.
Okay. I'm going to say Ezekiel Elliott over 75 rushing yards. Oh, I hate that. I don't, but that's what I'm going to go with. It feels bold enough. And then I'm going to say, I never picked the Cowboys. So I'm going to go Ravens 24, Cowboys 17. There it is.
Beautiful. Chris?
Oh man, I gotta think about this for a second. Oh, one thing before on the Greek festival is Stavi gonna be there?
Stavros? I don't know, man. I haven't seen that man in a very, very long time. It's funny, like having grown up close enough in age to like recognize him before he was big, but no, I haven't seen him. Other than man, I feel like he kind of encapsulated all Ravens fans with his latest bit after the Raiders game.
He really has. It's been rough. But Stavi, if you're able to make it, that'd be pretty cool. I'd get a picture. Big fan.
It's awesome.
But yeah. Anyway, so bold prediction, score prediction. Bold prediction for me.
The Ravens win the game.
Yeah, Ravens win the game.
It's currently, by the way, the Ravens are favored by a whole point with an over-under of 49.
That's a road favorite. I mean, that's
significant.
Something.
Yeah,
that's
wow.
That's ridiculous.
Defending division champ.
Look, man. I don't know how likely this is, but like we kind of talked about, I think the offensive line, particularly run blocking, is like the thing we really got to figure out. Bold prediction for me: Henry with 100 all-purpose yards. Obviously, hopefully, most of it's rushing. I don't think he's going to be a huge factor in the passing game, but I do think the Ravens are still going to try and figure out a way to get him involved. So that's my bold prediction. Score prediction. Yeah, I got to agree with Peter earlier. I feel like this is a must-win game for the Ravens. If they don't, we're going to be in a really, really bad place. Game-wise, I'll say they win, but it'll be a close one. 23-20 Ravens.
Sounds like a lot of field goals.
Sure. Peter, I'll let you go last. I'll hop in here. Man, I will say, Peter said last week 100 from Henry and Lamar each. Wasn't even close. And now we're so deflated that like a Henry, all 100 all-purpose yards. We'll be okay with that. That's acceptable. So here we are. But I think for me, the bold prediction is going to be that after 2 quiet weeks, Kyle Hamilton is able to generate impact plays. I hate just saying like that, like general term, but I'll put it this way: if sacks are a single point and a tackle for loss is a half point and an interception is 2 points, he will have 1.5 points of impact play. Is that fair?
You have to send this into PFF.
Yeah, is this an IDP league now?
Yeah.
It's like he's gonna have three. He's gonna have 3 tackles for loss, a tackle for loss, and a sack, or a. And also, sacks don't count as tackles for losses in this particular experiment. It has to be multiple plays. Or interception will just clear it all up, or force fumble, turnover. So if that's fair, that's my. Yeah, my impact form. And then
what?
Wait, what?
I was going to ask what you thought the score was going to be.
I know, I'm getting there. So the score prediction, this is tough. Okay, I've been able to see now that the implied score is 29-28 Ravens, and I don't buy that for a second. So I think there's 2 universes. The Ravens score over 35 points, or they score under 23. There's no in between. They will not score 27 points. They will not score 30 points. Like it's like either they have figured it out and points are going to be scored.
Now are these Kyle Hamilton points or are these football points?
Football points, universally accepted.
But how many
points.
impact points here?
Yeah, how many impact points? I don't know. What's the over under on impact points?
Yeah, I don't know. But I think
use a free DK token on Ravens over 2.5 impact points.
I am basically describing IDP. I know. I should have just said like N IDP points for Kyle Hamilton. Probably not the worst way to I don't know, judge a defensive player's contributions. But anyhow, so like I said, there's going to be this weird chasm. So I'm going to choose that the Ravens are able to score 35 whole points like I did last week, but they'll be getting chased and it'll be 27 points for the Cowboys because the defense is still going to figure out ways to like have CeeDee Lamb dominate, or like Zeke looks like a competent running back for a millisecond, or like they literally can't find Deuce Vaughn. Like they don't see him on the field and he just happens to be in the end zone at the end of the play.
I want to see a picture of Isaiah Likely and Deuce Vaughn standing beside each other. They should exchange jerseys at the end of the game. That would be great.
Oh man. All right, does that leave it with me?
It's over to you, Peter.
All
Sorry
right.
for that.
All right. Well, I am surprised that this bold prediction is going to come from myself and not from another member of this podcast. So some people will need to, stay in their chairs for this one. Make sure that you're sitting down when you hear this bold prediction. I think something the Ravens are going to realize going into this game is you're playing Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. You're going to need to be aggressive. Obviously, the Saints won big last week, but we know this is an offense that can score a lot of points. So they're going to need big plays. And I think that this is going to be the week that they finally do it. They finally unlock the bait man himself.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, make it really bold here.
He's logging off.
Really bold. 120 yards, including a 60-yard plus touchdown. They're gonna see what Rashid Shaheed did, and they're gonna be like, "We got a fast guy too." They're gonna unlock Bateman, but I hate to say it, I don't think it's gonna be enough to win. I think the Ravens will lose the game 30-27. But honestly, it's a really tough to pick this game. I think even if I take my fandom out of it, even if I take my frustration over the first 2 games, you got two teams here that have a lot of talent, but also a lot of flaws, right? Two teams that, if everything goes right for them, could win the Super Bowl. Two teams that, if things don't, could be 500, right? So it's going to be an exciting game, and, tough matchup to call. Very tough matchup to call. Hopefully the Ravens make it out of this one. Derek, you guys have one win. We need to get ours, so you can get it next week. But
that's fine. I'm fine with that. No, you're right though. I mean,
we'll see what happens.
Both these teams run so hot and cold. I mean, either team could blow out the other.
Yep.
So it's I'm smashing the under though. That's too many points. I don't see that happening.
I agree with you. Full stop. I just we didn't even talk. I don't think his name was uttered, but I don't know what Dak Prescott's going to do in this game. I have no idea. I could not put my finger on it.
I think he'll play.
So true.
Now, does he put on his cleats?
What kind of cleats are you wearing? Are they going to be white cleats, black cleats?
Are they in Dallas cleats? Or Sao Paulo? Because that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So, well, Derek, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this was fun.
You brought a great energy to this show. I hope that buying a new TV goes well, and we'll talk to you later. For everybody else,
that's good.
Thanks so much for tuning in after a disappointing loss. Hopefully, we'll see the Ravens figure something out this next week. You can find us. Well, you can find us at the Greek Festival this weekend. But otherwise, you can find us online at OneWinningPod on Twitter, OneWinningPod@gmail.com. If you want to email us or, your long takes, we'll listen. But anyways, thanks so much, and we'll catch you next week. Go Ravens.